Okay, continuing on, we're going to look at social context fields. The background, of course, is an aurora borealis. I have to tell you, frankly, I've never seen it, even though I've been up in northern Canada quite a bit. It's one of these things that you've got to sort of get up and see in the middle of the night. It's quite well understood. It's electron emission from principally solar cosmic rays coming into the atmosphere. It's something I would like enjoy seeing, but never have. And there it is. So on to I think another interesting topic in episode number 7, social context fields. I mentioned earlier that the general shift in physics from talking about forces, which goes back to Newton, coming later to not everything being articulated in terms of fields from Einstein's general relativity. So we're going to look at this idea of fields. I think most of my audiences are technical in the US and they understand completely this idea of a field. It's, of course, this. No, that's a joke. Not that kind of field. A field is something that fills the space, taking on a value everywhere. So, for example, in this room, there's a temperature field. You could define every place in here with a very accurate thermometer, a slightly different temperature. That would be called a scalar field. Similarly, every place in this room has a gravitational field modified slightly by matter. And so that would be a vector field. And in terms of relativity, we talk about tensor fields. This is the primary idea. What Einstein did in 1915 was something that eluded people since Newton and before. Newton wrote equations for gravity, but when you asked him to explain the mechanism, he was at a loss. So Einstein explained the mechanism in terms of what he called the curvature of space-time. And so this is a symbolic version of it. Here's the Earth creating a curvature in space-time that's creating this gravitational field for the moon to roll around, orbit around the Earth. It's a very interesting idea and influenced physics ever since. Did you ever wonder what's unique about our species that we're able to dominate the planet like none other, including we annihilated the Neanderthals? I was very disappointed to hear President Biden refer to the governors of states who were not requiring masks as Neanderthals. Neanderthals actually were smarter, bigger, and stronger than us. I have Neanderthal. I and almost all Europeans and even Asians have some Neanderthal blood. Some of my friends have a lot of it. Seems to benefit them. How did we annihilate them after we had sex with them? You might think all these things are because of our individual abilities, like John's Nobel Prize, because that's what we tend to reward people for. It's not. It's the fact that we are hyper tribal. Look, for example, the way people respond to meaningless sporting events with so much energy. This is the source of all nationalism. It's only recently that people became joined a tribe according to imaginary lines on the map, nations. And here's what really fascinates me about this phenomenon. We tend to rely on our collective mind for our beliefs. This explains the partisanship in our political parties. People hold the beliefs of the tribe, believing they're their own. They don't understand they got this from the group. Now, I'm guilty of this in the sense that I trust peer-reviewed science articles for the most part. Why do I trust them? Well, I've done the process, I understand the process. It's one of rigorous, ruthless review, and I think that brings out the truth. Religions, of course, are the same thing. We tend to hold the same beliefs as other people, and I think the reason people go to church has more to do with the sense of tribal comity than it does in what the religions stand for, because religions are quite different. And the most extreme case in modern times are political parties that are actually stronger bonds even in families, which is astounding if you think about it. So we're going to look at the way our behaviors shape these social context fields that come from our tribalism and affect everyone's behaviors. And this is a self-reinforcing feedback loop. Our behaviors affects the social context, affects how other people behave, in terms affects how we behave. This is our big tribal force field. So I think humans are at great risk from climate change. Every species of our genus has gone extinct so far. Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo neanderthalis, every single one. And I think our time is very short because of climate change. But I want to show you an easy way to track this phenomenon, and also another example of what I think is the really important phenomenon in this area and also in the work I do, self-reinforcing feedback loops. So today the Arctic is mostly frozen. And what happens is light comes in at 6,000 degrees, the wavelength of visible light. 90% of it gets reflected back into space, and because visible light passes through the atmosphere pretty well, it's just gone. 10% of it gets reflected and absorbed into the ice, snow, and water and stays there. But the minute the Arctic goes ice-free, what happens is this same 90% becomes 94% absorbed, and most of the global climate change heating is in the oceans now, overwhelmingly, and only 6% gets re-emitted as visible light. So the way to keep your eye on climate science and how dangerous the situation is to just watch the Arctic when it goes what they call blue water. Blue water means 80% of the ice is gone. And when that happens, we get an immediate additional trillion tons of heating. So all the carbon dioxide heating so far is about 3 trillion tons. The minute we go ice-free, it's a trillion more. So I think the easy way to see when disaster is imminent for our species is just to watch this self-reinforcing feedback loop develop. When's it going to happen? I think it would have happened last year if we had not had an El Nino instead of an El Nino, but we'll see. La Nina is rather cool. El Nino is hot, but I think most experts think we're within 3 or 4 years of an ice-free Arctic. And it's not clear that pretty soon after that, it just gets hotter and hotter and hotter because it's going to absorb so much more energy with the ice gone. Unfortunately, the resolution of climate change, it's got two great dilemmas. One is it evolves very slowly, and humans aren't well adapted to deal with things that happen slowly because in our evolutionary history, things didn't happen rapidly. Maybe one of the most rapid recurrent changes was the seasons, and that takes months. But the other problem is that we require an international response, and tribes, herds if you want, tend to devolve to the lowest common denominator. If you don't believe that, just watch our political discourse and you'll see it quite clearly, lots of evidence. So social context fields are very much like physical fields. I call them Mother Nature's fields. They're visible and influential. Here's a model, for example, of our Earth and Moon going around the sun in orbit. Everything's calm. Here comes a big rock, an asteroid, if you will, either propelled by a rocket motor or more often by nature, it comes in or interacts with this field. Now, what's important here is two things happen. The orbit of the asteroid was altered. You saw that, but I've exaggerated this for presentation purposes. It changes the orbit of the parent thing. The same thing happens with a magnetic field. If I were to create a magnetic field with a coil of wire and put a current through it, it'll make a field. And all magnetic fields, as far as we know, are dipole fields like this. And if I put a bar magnet in that field and moved it, the bar magnet would be affected by the field, and the field would be affected by the bar magnet. In the same way, when we select 8 carefully chosen behaviors and habituate them, we create a field, an environment of high performance social context that affects everybody else in the field. A self-reinforcing feedback loop. I love this development model because it's collective. We're changing everybody at once together. And all you've got to do to influence everything around you is look at how you behave. That's the key to all this work. Social context fields control people's behaviors. We ignore them at our peril. And I showed you examples of all the catastrophes that occurred because we didn't pay attention to this. We can and must control our social context fields by how we behave. I like this process that I call AMBR. This is a wonderful way to get basically anything you want. It's about what you pay attention to, and the most important attention element for me is this place of focus on what matters. That sets up your mindset, which you can choose with your thoughts and your emotions, as I'll show you later. The mindset is the springboard for your behaviors. And as poet Emerson said, what you do speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you say. That in turn will get you positive results and a positive feedback loop, causing when this process works, you'll embed it and use it. And I live with it all the time. I employ it every time I have a difficulty, like for example, having our house burned down. And I'll talk more about that later. Working over the years with over 1,500 teams, we found two things most powerfully affect the team's social context. The first is the leaders' behaviors, particularly the hierarchical leaders, and we'll look at that some more later. But also in the case of technical teams or other things, the thought leaders, or in the case of, say, nonprofits, the values leaders have power also. And we have an online tool to measure and manage these. And we use these with coaching, and it's a small and very highly scattered, but average improvement of 0.4% per coaching session. If people are getting coaching a couple times a month, this adds up. But even bigger is the team members' behavioral norms. This is because we're tribal. This is the reason for this. And so this turns out to be even more powerful. We have an online tool to measure and manage this. And I'll show you the data later. But this is a median time of 15 minutes to do this, an hour to process, hour and a half to process the report. It improves team performance something like 4% every time you do it. We have teams doing this every 2 or 3, 4 or 5 months. This is an incredible result, unbelievable. And again, I'll explain more later. I'm interested in lots of things, including physiology. And this book, The First 20 Minutes, is written by the fitness editor for the New York Times, Gretchen Reynolds. And what I liked about this book is that she broke down most of the things that I've been taught about what's good for you in terms of fitness. Things like stretching before you exercise is not good. But the most important thing is the need to move. And the expression that's becoming more common, sitting is the new smoking. And so during the workshops, every half hour, every 20 minutes, I have everybody get up and move in some way. Now, I do, and I like these knee squats. And the reason I like them is that they are using the biggest muscles in the body, these ones on the front of your thigh. And it's important to do these correctly. And the right way to do this is make sure you keep your weight on your heels and make sure your knees are behind your toes. If you do this, you can go up and down very, very nicely. I won't demo it here because the picture's not so good, but I do this in workshops every halfway between the breaks. That's giving us our 20-minute relaxation time for our brain. And I kind of joke that if you're walking around wherever you work and see somebody you think might have been in a 4D workshop, you can do this little exercise and see what they do. If they give it back, that's the 4D salute. So I want to share a very effective exercise routine with you that I've been doing for some time. You put a 5-pound potato bag in each arm and extend your arms and hold them for as long as you can. You'll find each day you can hold them a little bit longer. After a couple of weeks, move up to 10-pound potato bags. Then try 50-pound potato bags. Then eventually get to the point where you can hold 100-pound potato bags for more than a minute. I'm at this level. And after you feel confident, put a potato in each bag. Okay. That ends episode 7. We're going to next go into episode 8, and I'm going to explain to you how one of the greatest tragedies in science occurred, aerospace science, the explosion of Space Shuttle Challenger, and the cause is probably not what you think. So see you in a few for episode 8, and thank you for watching, and be safe.